Hello and welcome to your Daily Detroit, recorded on 4/20/2020. I'm Jairus Days, and on today's show, a new statewide poll shows just how deep the coronavirus crisis has hit economically, especially for millennials and younger adults. Plus, a beat on the actual unemployment numbers in the state, as well as approval ratings for both our governor and president. Sven Gustafsson joins me to talk about it. But first, some quick updates on the unfolding situation from the state and the city of Detroit. The state of Michigan has now seen 2,468 COVID-19 deaths and 32,000 confirmed coronavirus cases. The 567 new cases in the last 24 hours is the lowest one-day total since March 26th. The governor also announced that she'll be taking a 10% pay cut, as well as senior staff, in light of almost certain budget cuts ahead for the state. The city of Detroit is the hardest hit, then Southeast Michigan in general.
The progress is great, but we're at a dangerous time. If you look at the pattern in other countries, we have dramatically bent the curve. Dr. Birx talked about it nationally on Saturday at the president's briefing. But every place in the world where people started to pat themselves on the back and said, this is under control, we can relax, they've seen a significant spike. And we just can't afford that here in the city.
That was Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan at a press briefing today. To continue to try to get their arms around the crisis, the mayor said that as of Thursday, every patient in a nursing home in the city will be tested for coronavirus, and that 1 in 4 coronavirus deaths by the time this is over may be tied to nursing homes. Testing is expanding as the city continues to add capacity. They're now saying city employees and essential workers without symptoms can get tests at the State Fairgrounds facility. We've shared that info before, but you just call 313-230-0505. That's 313-230-0505 for an appointment. Detroit has about 500 tests open per day currently, and by far has been the most aggressive in testing in the state, paying for and arranging for tests however they can get a hold of them. Duggan, after all, was at one point the CEO of a major nonprofit health system. 900 Detroit police officers are now back to work, and their quarantine numbers are down to just 7 per week, which is good news. A new poll finds that nearly 3 in 10 Michigan residents are out of work as a result of the coronavirus outbreak. That's the big finding from a statewide poll from the Detroit Regional Chamber and Glenn Gariff Group, which covers a bunch of topics from the job approval of Governor Whitmer and President Trump to the on-the-ground economic situations of Michiganders. It finds that 29% of respondents were furloughed, laid off, or unable to work. And before we start talking about this, I wanted to set the ground rules here. The poll was conducted over 2 days late last week and surveyed 600 respondents, and it's the first real look at what's happening, and I think it's an interesting one to talk about. Sven, I know you're joining me on the line for this. Good to talk to you.
Yo.
All right, so the top line is that 57% of Michigan residents approve of the job Governor Gretchen Whitmer is doing, as well as 44% approve of President Donald Trump. It's interesting that it's a clear majority, but it's also not an insignificant minority when it comes to people who do not like how the governor has been handling the crisis.
Approve, disapprove for Trump and Whitmer both fall along relatively predictable party line support. But I think what's interesting is that independents, people who don't affiliate themselves, don't identify themselves with either the Republican or Democratic Party, tend to disapprove of the job Donald Trump is doing, leading us through this outbreak, and approve of the job that Governor Whitmer is doing. So those are not good poll numbers for the president or his supporters.
It's also clear to me, and this is interesting, 50% of whites approve of the governor's job. Meanwhile, 99% of African Americans approve of the governor, and that shows a huge difference. And also, to me, with the crisis in general, so far it's been felt differently in different parts of the state and differently among racial lines.
Yeah, that's an astounding number, frankly,
So the Chamber is obviously a business group. We've talked to them before. We've had various folks of theirs on the show before. cards on table, that's what they are. But I think, Sven, you would agree that they're not as far right as the Detroit Regional Chamber as, say, other
No.
chambers in the state.
No, I agree. I mean, they've always been fairly down the center. I mean, I've known people who have worked at pretty high levels. In fact, we still know people who work at pretty high levels in the chamber, and they've always cut, a fairly centrist path. They work. They look to, I think basically the unofficial official company line there is, we cooperate with whoever's in the governor's office at the time. They are not, by and large, a rabid partisan organization.
As an economic group, one of the key things that they're looking at is the economic impact, and a big part of that is unemployment. Now, for context, I just got in my inbox all the numbers from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics that talk about the official unemployment rates. Well, that's for March, and that doesn't tell us a story of how this virus has been impacting us at all. Because nationally, it still puts the unemployment rate at 4.4%, which is not the reality out there.
If ever unemployment figures looked out of date, it's now, for sure. I mean, because that those are meaningless as far as what we're looking at April 20th. I mean, here's this poll. This is a telephone poll. It's not official unemployment numbers from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, but it's going to be a more accurate snapshot than the March figures, for sure.
And that poll says that 29% of our fellow Michiganders are without work right now, which is an insane unemployment rate. And it also shows that in different parts of the state, there is more impact. So up in Traverse City, that out of work number is 41%. Meanwhile, here in Metro Detroit, it's 27%.
Right, which is really it's interesting. I mean, it's bad. I mean, 27% is bad enough, obviously. 41% is even worse. And I think it explains a little bit about the protest last week in Lansing, the Operation Gridlock protests. I think by and large, you're looking at a group of outstaters. I mean, I'm sure there were people from Metro Detroit there as well, but I think you're seeing a lot of people from outstate regions, more rural parts of the state where COVID-19 hasn't really manifested itself yet, by and large. I mean, there are still, I looked at the map on Michigan.gov earlier. There's still a couple counties in the UP where they have had no confirmed cases or deaths yet. I have a feeling those are going to go away. I mean, I think the Lower Peninsula now, every county now has been affected, if I saw correctly. But so you can kind of understand in a sense where these people are coming from. Hey, there's no coronavirus here. Why am I being forced to stay home, or why am I furloughed and unable to make an income when this health crisis is not affecting it? I get that, but they're also leaving out some key and very important points to this whole health crisis. They don't. That's turning a blind eye to how this coronavirus works.
For sure. And up in that way, there's a lot more service economy. There's a lot more people, light manufacturing, all that kind of stuff, where you actually have to be in person as opposed to the teleworker or the Zoom jockey.
Right. I mean, we're talking about this is a poll from the Detroit Regional Chamber, which, we were talking just the other day about the Mackinac Policy Conference, which they've postponed to August. I was thinking about it. I wonder if that's even going to go forward in August, if they're going to be able to do it. And frankly, I started wondering whether the tourist season on Mackinac Island is going to happen at all this year. I mean, do you want to get on a boat, in July with, a crowded boat and then go to an island where, it's teeming with people walking around Main Street, going in and out of the t-shirt stores and everything? I mean, I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound terribly safe or smart to me.
Well, I just got word that they actually canceled the Lilac Festival.
Oof.
Another thing about this one that I wanted to talk about is the impact of this whole thing on young people. And it's really disproportionate. Now, overall, 28% of residents are saying that they're worried about putting food on the table. And that's really framed as, I am in I'm worried about a hunger situation. But millennials and younger are getting hurt the worst. 45% of those polled aged 18 to 29 are in that situation, and 40% of those 30 to 39 are worried about that. So this is really hitting people earlier in their careers a lot harder.
Well, and you think about millennials, I mean, it's probably safe to assume that a lot of these people are working in service industry jobs and are, so are being furloughed, or laid off right now and are directly affected by this. So, I mean, that makes sense. We know that the, millennial generation is, struggling. They're, unlikely to be as wealthy as their parents' generation were, to use the kind of popular metric and everything. So yeah, not surprising. And I think, Jer, if I saw the data correctly, young people tended to believe that they had actually already been infected with COVID-19. 9%, and the 9% of respondents believe they'd already contracted the coronavirus.
Then on to unemployment. So the state has said that they have processed 95% of the claims they've received, but that doesn't tell the whole story because a bunch of people are just not able to file their claims. 37% of furloughed or laid off people have not been successful filing for unemployment, and 15% of respondents are not sure if they've been successful, which is kind of crazy. And here is another place where young people have gotten the short end of the stick. 52%, more than half of unemployed workers under the age of 30 have not been able to successfully file for unemployment. So there are a lot of dark clouds. And I mean, look, no system was built to handle this kind of volume.
No, we're in uncharted territory here for sure. And keep in mind too that the state is trying to do all of this stuff, ramp up their unemployment insurance claims filing and response and everything virtually. It's not like they're all sitting in their offices, with access to their files and whatever they need. They're all working from home, presumably just like you and I are, but with a hugely expanding need.
I mean, that's little comfort for people who, aren't getting checks right now, but it is the truth.
I don't know what to say other than like, this is just uncharted territory. There's the pain is going to be spread far and wide for sure.
Well, when I was on the press call this morning, it was clear with the pollster that, I mean, he was just stunned. There's been nothing like this in his multiple decades of polling. Like, he's just never seen anything close to this, anything like this whatsoever. A few points before we go. First, half of Michiganders believe that Michigan is already in a recession. I think that's pretty clear to me that regardless, this is going to be the case and that this is going to sting for quite a while. I don't know. I hesitate to use the term new normal, but it's definitely not going to get back to anything like we knew for quite a while.
I mean, they asked respondents about what their thoughts on how long it would take them to return to work. Nearly half felt they'd be back within a couple of weeks, anywhere from immediately to within a few weeks, which I think, frankly, seems a little optimistic. I mean, we'll see what happens May 1st. The governor is expected to sort of gradually start reopening things. I don't think it's going to be major reopenings yet, but we will see. I guess good news, silver lining here, 61% of respondents of workers said they felt safe, against 32% who said they did not feel safe.
This is all going to be uncharted territory for a while, Sven. I mean, let alone going to work, right? Like, I see this viral video that makes me laugh of this restaurant where, I don't know if you've seen this one, where the server comes out and they're 6 feet away from the tables and she tries to serve them. And she just whips the bottles of Topo Chico at the table and like flings the dishes at them and it just breaks everywhere. I wonder, and I wonder this from listeners, like, how quickly would you feel confident, going back to, say, a small stadium? I was thinking about Detroit City FC the other day, because that's a team where, 7,000 people in a stadium. It's not as big, but it's still giant.
Oh, they've been talking about canceling the college football season next fall, like wholesale, which is unbelievable. Talking about restaurants. I mean, I've heard talk about like sitting in restaurants, but, enforcing limits is, almost kind of like what they're doing with grocery stores now, like, limiting the number of people who can come in. That's an idea. Is that practical for restaurants? I mean, can restaurants even survive on that? Restaurants need to, they depend on being packed and, having multiple seatings, getting as many people in and out the door as they can in a period of time. I just don't. It's hard to see how that kind of thing could even like work from a business perspective for restaurants.
Well, if you've got thoughts, send them to us at dailydetroit@gmail.com. Thanks, Sven. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Thanks to Lindsay and Amanda for joining us as members. You are both awesome. I'm really glad to have you along with us. Plus, Colin for doubling his support over the weekend at patreon.com/dailydetroit. You are helping push Detroit's conversation forward. And all of you, it's much appreciated, and it makes a huge difference. I'm Jer Stays. Until tomorrow, take care of each other, and we'll get through this together.